Okay, yeah, so the other questions was, what did I mean when I said, there's two things I said there. I said that Jiu-Jitsu had more in common with Kendo than Judo, and I said about that way of organising that's in Judo kind of poisons the well if you're thinking about Jiu-Jitsu. So, what do I mean by that? Okay. The red and the blue. I remember my teacher saying, after he gave this sort of seminar and some Judo guys came, how much more he felt that Kendo had in common with Jiu-Jitsu than did Judo. And he was, in my opinion, spot on. What do we mean by that? Well, it's understanding what waza is. So, waza. Actually, let's move that to the middle here. Waza, what is the translation of that? Well, there's basically two things, okay? Some will say that translates to technique. Some will say that translates to skills or tactics. And it's kind of actually used for both. Now, this is typically the Judo approach. And this is more the Kendo approach. So in Judo, let's say we have the Nagi no Kata. And, I'm not an expert on Judo, so let's just hold off on the critique of how much of the Nagi no Kata I can reel off. Yeah. So, we've got shoulder throw, we've got hip throw, we've got, Yosamura to me if you know. We've got hip throw variations. Do reaps and sweeps. Come into Nagi no Kata. I think it's broken up into sections. So this kind of makes sense for Judo because let's look at scoring. I need to get an ippon. How do I get an ippon? By properly do one of these. Do one of these properly. Properly, as in the feet come off the ground, the back line's on the mat. There's criteria, but that's basically it. So it makes sense to go shoulder through, hip through. That's a score, that's a point, that's a legitimate technique. Okay. Let's think about Kendo. Kendo no Kata. Kata or other waza. a lot of people in Jiu-Jitsu, a lot of Jiu-Jitsu nowadays is re-engineered, okay? That's a whole other story. That's another whiteboard session. But people often use this naming convention for writing down lists of techniques. So they write down hip throw, shoulder throw, scooping throw, this technique, this bit of weirdness, that bit of weirdness. The end product. So what we have here is a timeline. Okay? There's an engagement timeline. It's going down here until the end, and hopefully the end of this is Hirogoshi. Okay? The engagement starts, we move through time, and we're going to end on Hirogoshi in this option. So we name it in this convention. What happened there? Hirogoshi. Terrific. Kendo no kata is different. In Kendo, they use, well, in the competition, they use 4 targets. Right? Head, throat, wrist, torso. So, she just hand me a short sword. So, the opponent attacks, cut's coming down, the kendoka lifts the sword, bang, deflecting the blow of the opponent, whack, chops him back in the head. Okay? Now, this idea of lifting up and deflecting it up there, they call, I believe, Suryagi. Don't quote me there. Okay? There may be a chop downwards here, and as they clear the line, they deflect it downwards here and counter strike. They call that Nagashi. Nagashi. Okay. And then that counter strike, chop him in the head. Okay. They do Suryagi and chop to the head. Chop head. In Nagashi Yuki, they chop head. The cut comes down, they step out of the way. They hit the opponent's sword down, they come in, they chop the wrist or the head. Right. So I think they call that Makiyatoshi. Again, probably getting this wrong. We'll go to Makiyatoshi. Chop wrist. Chop head. Maybe they chop the head. Why not? Let's chop the head. First kendo kata, the opponent comes in, you give him a bit of a flinch or some such thing, you go back, he gets the distance wrong, you come back and you chop his head. Alright? Just sort of get him with distance, then you chop his head. Alright. Now, if we name this by the judo convention, alright, these are all all these techniques should be called chop head. Okay? Because that's how it finished. How did it finish at chop his head? Well, that doesn't tell us much about how I chopped his head. That's got nothing to do really with the technique. So the skill or the tactic was Tsuryogi, Nagashiyuki, Bakiotoshi, whatever they call the distance one. It's not chop head, chop head, chop head, chop head. This was how they opened that window so they could chop him on the head. Okay? So there's this mid step here where you open the window for doing something. Alright? So here that's named, that's how I open the window. Why is that also important? Well, okay, perhaps in the kata they go chop head, chop head, chop head, chop head, but it didn't really matter what I finished on. If he was too far away for me to chop his head, chop his wrist. Doesn't matter. Head's too far away, chop wrist. If my goal was to chop the wrist but he's too close, chop head. Right? That's irrelevant. What they're really practicing is the skill of opening that window of opportunity. So they name after that. Alright, so if I'm attacking a person, now this doesn't sound very judo-like, does it? But you typically attack, you're setting up these attacks, you penetrate with the hip, etc. I'm attacking the person, so the way that I attack with shoulder throw is different to the way that I attack with hip throw, it's different to the way that I attack with a sotogari, which is different to the way that I attack with haragoshin. So if I go engage, attack with that, wing, okay, I name it there. But here, I engage, I use this tactic to open the window, and then I finish with whatever's appropriate. Now this model is much closer to I'm going to call it practical. I was going to write good Jujitsu. I'm going to say practical Jujitsu. I don't want to offend anyone today, right now. Now, if you're operating on this model of how to do these techniques, that's fine. But it's not really the model of practical Jiu-Jitsu, because here we're not training for a sport, we're training for an instance where we're at the disadvantage. Because this is your job, well, he can attack me with all sorts of things, but I can't just go buck wild. I have to operate within a set of rules, I've got certain amounts of equipment, I've got some advantages because of whatever backup or authority that I might have, right? Or I'm in the self-defense, defensive tactics realm, okay? I'm just walking down the street, I don't know what's going on. The person who's attacking me is ahead of the game, presume that they're stronger than me. Why would they come and pick on somebody who's freaking bigger than them for fun, right? Doesn't make any sense. So we're more on this being attacked stream rather than this attacking stream. So we're going to use various skills and tactics to open the window to do something. Now, if I've engaged with somebody and I've got hold of them and I've been pushed backwards, okay, much like chop on head, chop on head, chop on head, chop on head, I might get haragoshi based on where the feet went up. Oh, that's the spot for haragoshi. I might have been further around and oh, no, that's the one for toshi. I might be sort of side on and oh, I have to use the spring hip or something, okay? But these tactics that we're using here to sort of set up the window of opportunity here exist for us. Because why not, for the most part, attacking with these things? These windows are opening up because we're trying to keep our structure, we're trying to break the structure of the opponent. That happens based on our relative body position. What is the right thing to do then? Is it chop on head? Is it chop on wrist? Right? Is it this, or, you know, more types of techniques that we usually use? So, when I say, my instructor said that we've got more in common with Kendo than Judo, well that's what we mean. We've got a multi-step process here. We don't just go straight from engagement to technique. Okay? And what we're practicing here in terms of waza is skills and tactics over techniques. So this means that writing down things in lists, and this is why in the syllabus we're using, I don't write down a list of techniques. We write down branches or sub-modules of which waza we're using to open a window, and then based on that particular position and that waza that we've used and the likely things that are going to happen, the 2 or 3 or 4 things that are going to happen, that gives us our list of techniques that are possible or useful, and quite often they're very similar techniques all the time. Because there's only chop in head, chop in throat, chop on torso, chop in wrist. Alright? 4 techniques. Okay, we've got more than 4, but we don't need 150 because we don't need to name. This is another mistake. We don't need to name each continual stream. So we had an engagement, I used this one and did that technique. That's one line. That's not how it goes. We sort of go, we've got a position here. We've got positions. There's an engagement, the position opens up, we use one of these tactics to open a window, and then we use the appropriate finish. A finish that's appropriate for those things. So then, that's what I meant when I said that this judo method here sort of poisons the well. If you, in your mind, try and think about the jiu-jitsu that we do here, or practical jiu-jitsu or whatever, in this fashion, you've got a problem, because you're missing the point, the way that we set the syllabus up like we do and the way that we train like we do. The point of having that additional resistance and all that type of stuff brings the focus back on these things. We reduce these number of techniques. I use whatever technique is best for that time. I'm not looking to recreate this whole path each time. I'm filtering. I'm filtering here, I'm filtering there. So what we end up with in these things is, on this judo path, we've got here, and theoretically, we've just got all these possibilities. Over here, we've gone there. Well, how many positions do I have? Alright, maybe I've only got 3 positions that have come around here. And then on that one, I might only use a couple of things, and then I'm going to use a couple of techniques. Right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, I need 2 more. Okay? 10, 11. Now, let's not write this off. Just because it was organised this way at the start doesn't mean there's some good judo guys who putting their stuff on YouTube for free, and they will create this. They'll look at positions. They'll break it down. I have these positions. I've got these starting tactics with grips. Okay? I've got these certain types of unbalancings. I've got these things that people commonly attack me with. They start doing their own filtering. And then they go, well, I've got 3 things here that I do. I've got a couple of things. He goes one way or the other. He's either going to push or pull me. So we do that thinking like Kendo in the syllabus. We don't leave it to the instructor. Okay, in the syllabus, that thinking's built into it. It's systematized, it's modulated. So that's what I meant when I said about we having more in common with Kendo and Jujitsu than
we do judo.
Combined with that fact about
It not being alarmed, we just went over.